I need to confess something. I was an addict. Not to a substance you could name, but to effort itself. I was a devout follower in the church of more. I truly believed that if I just squeezed my fists a little tighter, if I ran a little faster, if I shouted my intentions a little louder, then the universe would have no choice but to finally give in, to yield. I treated reality like a stubborn door, and I was the battering ram. But the universe, it doesn't break. It doesn't even fight back. When met with all my force, all my frantic pushing and pulling, it did the last thing I expected. It fell silent. An immense, deafening silence that swallowed my shouting whole. It was in that silence, in that complete defeat, that I stopped looking at the maps of the world and found the work of a different kind of explorer, a man named Carl Jung. He wasn't a philosopher who charted the stars. He was a cartographer of the soul. He drew maps of the dark continents inside of us, the very places we are taught to fear and avoid. And his work proposed a terrifying heresy, an idea that goes against everything our modern world preaches. What if the force of your will is the very thing pushing your dream away? What if the secret language of creation isn't spoken in action, but in surrender? This brings us to the central question of our time together, the question that unravels everything you think you know about achievement. Why is it that the harder we try, the further we seem to drift from what we truly desire? The answer is both simpler and more disturbing than you can imagine. It's because the one doing all the striving isn't truly you. To understand this, we must first understand the ruler of your conscious world, the one sitting on the throne of your mind, directing your every waking move. In psychology, this ruler has a name, the ego. Think of your ego as a general, a brilliant, anxious, and deeply paranoid general, pacing the ramparts of a fortress. And that fortress is you. It's your identity, your accomplishments, your name, your story. The general's only mission, his sole obsession, is to protect this fortress at all costs. He craves order. He demands predictability. His greatest fear is the vast, chaotic wilderness that lies just outside the castle walls, the unknown. So, what does he do? He spends his entire existence strengthening the walls. And how does he do that? With your desires. That promotion you're chasing? That's another brick in the wall. The specific amount of money you believe will finally make you secure? More mortar for the ramparts? The relationship you think will complete you? It's the highest tower on the fortress, a gleaming testament to the general's control. These goals are not inherently bad, but to the ego, they are not sources of joy. They are instruments of security. They are food rations for the general. He convinces you that you are hungry for a feast, when all he wants is to ensure the storehouses are full for his long, predictable reign. He makes you believe you are a free citizen seeking happiness, when in fact, you are a subject working tirelessly to maintain his rule. We are puppets, convinced we are the masters of our own strings, choosing our own dance. But the ego is the one dictating the movements. It makes us fall in love with the elegance of our own prison. It whispers in your ear that this fortress is the entire world, that the person you see in the mirror is your entire being. And here is the devastating truth at the heart of our struggle. Your ego has no interest in your happiness. It is only interested in its survival. It wants you to be safe. It wants you to be known. It wants you to be contained within the walls it understands. But the soul, the true self that lies dormant within you, it has no interest in safety. It is interested in wholeness. And wholeness requires embracing the very chaos your inner general has spent a lifetime fighting against. This is the trap. This is why you feel so exhausted. You are not just working a job. You are endlessly fortifying a castle for a ruler who can never be satisfied. This is why more effort fails, because you are simply trying to build the walls higher when the call to freedom is not coming from the outside world. It's coming from within the fortress itself. So, if the ego is the general, the warden of your conscious mind, what lies in the dungeon beneath his feet? What is this thing he is so utterly terrified of you discovering? The thing in the dungeon has a name. Jung called it the shadow. And what is the shadow? It is a dark, heavy suitcase, filled with every part of yourself you were ever taught to disown. Every piece of you that was deemed unacceptable, inconvenient, or bad. Think about it. The flash of rage you were told was impolite. The surge of ambition you were taught was arrogant. The profound vulnerability you learned to hide for fear of being seen as weak. Your envy, your lust, your fear. All the messy, vibrant, chaotic parts of your humanity. Society, your family, your culture. They handed you this suitcase when you were a child, and you have been dutifully filling it ever since. And you drag this heavy, rattling thing behind you, everywhere you go, pretending it isn't there. The ego, your inner general, is the one who frantically shoves these things into the suitcase and slams the lid shut, hoping no one ever hears the noise. But the contents of that suitcase do not disappear. What we don't own internally, we are destined to meet externally. Everything that irritates you about other people, everything you judge harshly in the world that is often just a piece of your own shadow projected onto them, staring back at you. That arrogant colleague, perhaps he's carrying the ambition you were afraid to own. That overly emotional friend, perhaps she is expressing the grief you never allowed yourself to feel. The shadow doesn't go away. It just wears other people's faces. There is an old story. A village is built in a valley, and for generations, they have lived in fear of a monster that dwells in the deep forest on the mountain above. They tell tales of its terrible roar, its frightening appearance. They build their walls high. They teach their children to never ever go into the woods. But the village is withering. Their crops are failing, their well is running dry, and a deep sense of malaise has fallen over everyone. One day, a young woman, tired of the fear and the slow decay, decides to do the unthinkable. She doesn't take a sword or a spear. She takes only a lantern, and she walks into the forest. It is dark and frightening, and she hears the roars, but she keeps walking towards the sound. Finally, in a hidden clearing, she finds the source, the monster. It is huge and wild, and covered in moss and leaves, but it does not attack her. It simply looks at her with ancient, weary eyes. And as she holds her lantern high, she sees that it is not roaring in anger. It is roaring in sorrow. And it is not a monster. It is a guardian. And behind it, she sees what it has been guarding all along. The original spring that once fed the entire valley, now blocked and choked by fallen rocks and neglect, the source of all their life. That village is your conscious mind. The frightened villagers are your ego. And that monster, that is your shadow. And the blocked spring it guards, that is all the power, the creativity, the passion, and the raw life force you have been cut off from, all because you were afraid to enter the forest. You see, you cannot attract light by pretending your own darkness doesn't exist. The universe doesn't respond to your positive affirmations. It responds to your wholeness. And this is the true meaning of doing nothing. It is not passivity. It is not apathy. It is the most courageous act a human being can undertake. It is the act of stopping the endless running, stopping the frantic building of walls, stopping the pretending. It is turning around, walking to the edge of your own dark forest, taking a deep breath and stepping in with only the small lantern of your awareness. It is the act of finally sitting down with the monster you've been running from your entire life and simply listening. This is the great work. It is the alchemical journey of turning lead into gold. It is not easy. In fact, it may be the hardest thing you ever do. But what happens when you stop fighting the guardian? What happens when the monster is no longer a monster, but a guide? What rises from that sacred, terrifying silence? What rises from that silence is not a new voice shouting orders. It's not another general barking commands. What rises is a presence, a deep, quiet, unshakable center. Jung called this the self. For your entire life, you have mistaken the ego for the center of your universe. You believed that anxious general on the castle wall was the king. But he is not the king. He is merely the loudest servant. The self is the true monarch. It has been there all along, silent, waiting, in the heart of the kingdom. The ego is the frantic, flickering flame of a candle. The self is the vast, calm darkness of the night sky that holds it. The ego is the wave, crashing and striving. The self is the entire, boundless ocean. And the great revelation of this journey is this. The self is not the good part of you that has finally vanquished the bad. It is not the light that has eliminated the darkness. That is the ego's way of thinking a world of enemies and warfare. The self is the union of both. It is the sacred space where the light and the shadow stop fighting and recognize they are two hands of the same body. It is the moment the frightened general finally lays down his sword and listens to the wisdom of the guardian he once called a monster. The power of that guardian is not destroyed, it is integrated. Its strength becomes your strength. Its passion becomes your passion. The lead of your rejected parts has been turned into the gold of a whole and complete being. So what does it feel like to be guided by the self? It does not speak in words. It does not give you a 5-year plan. Its voice is a quiet, certain knowing in your bones. It's the feeling of a ship's keel finding the deep, invisible current. It's the sudden, piercing clarity that arrives after a long storm. It is the peace that settles in your chest for no logical reason, even when the world outside is imperfect. When you act from the self, you do things without fully understanding why, only knowing with every cell in your body that it is the correct and only path. You stop trying to force the river to bend to your will. You simply become the river. And this is the secret. This is the state where everything finally begins to fall into place. Because you have stopped fighting yourself, you stop fighting the world. Because you are whole, you stop seeking things to complete you. You no longer need to manipulate every piece on the chessboard of life, because you have found an inner guidance system that is far more intelligent than your conscious mind. You make the right move without needing to see the entire board. And the universe responds to this coherence. The right people, the right opportunities, the right ideas, they don't come to you because you chase them down. They come to you because they are on the same frequency. You have finally tuned your instrument correctly, and now the symphony can play through you. In many cultures, this state of wholeness is represented by a symbol, the mandala, a perfect circle with a clear, defined center. This entire journey, the descent into the dungeon and the return to the light, it is all for one purpose: to find that center within yourself, to stop living your life from the frantic, insecure perimeter, and to start living from this core of profound, unshakable peace. You have found your center. You are no longer at war with yourself. But how does the world respond to this new, whole version of you? What happens when the universe, for the first time, can finally hear your true voice? When the universe hears your true voice, it doesn't shout back. It begins to whisper. It starts a conversation, and it speaks in a language that the ego, with all its noise and logic, can't understand. A language of meaningful coincidence. A language that Jung called synchronicity. To the ego, the world is a series of random, disconnected events, a chaotic battlefield of cause and effect. But to the self, the world is a single, unified tapestry. Every thread is connected to every other thread, even if we can't see how. Synchronicity is when the universe allows you, for a brief moment, to see one of those hidden threads. It's a wink from reality, a quiet nod of encouragement. It's when you've been wrestling with a problem for weeks, and you open a book to a random page that holds the precise answer you need. It's when you think of an old friend you haven't spoken to in a decade, and your phone buzzes in your pocket with their name on the screen. It's when you overhear a stranger's conversation in a cafe, and they speak the exact words you needed to hear to resolve a private doubt. The ego dismisses these moments as mere chance. It has to, because they threaten its control, its rigid view of a predictable, mechanical world. But the self understands. It recognizes the echo between the inner world and the outer world. It understands the conversation. And this is where we must correct a great misunderstanding of our time. This is not about manifesting a new car or a specific sum of money. That is still the ego's game trying to impose its will upon reality. Synchronicity is not about getting what the ego wants. It is about receiving confirmation that you are aligned with what the self needs. It is not a monologue where you shout your demands into the void. It is a dialogue where you listen deeply to your own inner truth, and the world gently whispers back, yes, this way. This is the great shift. You stop desperately looking for signs from the outside world to tell you what to do. You learn to trust the quiet knowing of the self within, and the outside world simply begins to arrange itself around your inner certainty. You are no longer looking for signs. You have become the sign. These moments of synchronicity are the breadcrumbs on your unique path. They are the guideposts left by a deeper intelligence, reminding you that you are held, that you are part of a story far grander than your ego could ever comprehend. They are proof that you are not a stranger here. You are an essential part of the unfolding cosmos. To live this way is to walk in a constant, quiet conversation with reality itself. To trust the path as it appears before you, one meaningful step at a time. And this way of living, this journey of becoming whole, it has a name, a final destination.